everyone, and welcome to my I Love Learning podcast. If you don't know me, my name is Dr. Gina Anderson, and I am the CEO and co founder of Luma Brighter Learning. This season is all about the power of small because we know that every small moment can make such a big change in our lives. And I love sharing stories of grit and hard work because that truly is a mind of a champion. It's choosing, like when we're tired, to actually go work out, or it's choosing growth when we're actually stuck and it may seem easier to stay in bed and it could be more comfortable. But my passion is to change lives and to bring guests on that have truly represent a mind of a champion and who have overcome and continue to overcome hard things in their life to make a better life for themselves. And hopefully, their conversations and their voice can make just one person today feel a little bit better. So let's bring some sunshine, let's bring some goodness. And today, my guest is, I don't know if you know Michael Lombard, but he is here today. And one thing that I learned very quickly in researching him is, oh my gosh, like he does hard things, you all. Like that is what he does. He just told me that he just finished in, was it Austin? I got the city wrong like 3 times, but he just finished a marathon. And I know because I've done them, they are not easy. Thank you so much, Michael, for being on my show today. Why don't you just give people a high level of who you are and what you're passionate about?
Well, number one, I want to really thank you for bringing me on here. What an introduction. We share a lot in common because changing lives is definitely what I feel like I was put on here to do at this point. I didn't always
Mm,
think that way in a lot of different ways.
mm,
To explain who I am, it's kind of a little bit longer because it's who I am has everything to do with the last name you see behind me. You introduced me as Michael Lombard, and my last name has everything to do with what gives me a lot of purpose today, especially in the industry that I've worked in for since 2017. And
mm.
so, I mean, to explain who Mike Lombard is, I always have to explain who Lombard Trucking is because that's what I've called myself on the internet for the past 16 years since I made a Twitter
Wow.
account in 2010, which is Lombard Trucking. And so, I mean, to explain who I am, I have to say who Lombard Trucking is. And Lombard Trucking was a business that was started by my great grandfather, Nick.
Oh, I
Yes,
love that.
it's a very historic American story. Him and his brother, had 8 horses and 2 carriages. They incorporated as a motor carrier in the 1920s, 1923, and they grew to become one of the largest motor carriers in the Northeast up until they had sold in 1984. They sold in 1984 due to the Motor Carrier Act of 1980, known as deregulation. But the most important part is that my grandfather, somebody who I grew up with, my personal hero, he not only like his primary job, he was part owner of Lombard, and his primary
Mm,
job was that of a driver. Like he drove for 30 plus years at Lombard. He was a leader in that industry, leader in that space, and he passed away in 2013. Really learned the kind of the type of leader he was, and who he is, and these past several years, especially as I've gotten more and more involved in the industry, I've connected with other family members, second cousins who've told me stories about who the kind of guy my grandfather was when he was a driver and everything, so to speak. And so that right there, and the story, the Lombard story itself, is still one that is important to the city of Waterbury back in Connecticut. Which there's still a strip mall that's called Lombard Plaza because after Lombard
wow.
sold in '84, they sold the assets but retained real estate.
Mhm.
And when my grandfather sold the plaza in the latter part of the mid 2000s, it might have been between 2007 and nine. I think he might have sold it. I can't really remember.
Mhm.
But when he sold it, the new owners kept the name Lombard Plaza because of its historical relevance to the city. And so, like that type of stuff, really means something. But kind of bridging that gap into who I am, I mean, so that's kind of that's kind of the gentleman I grew up with. My grandfather, my own father, he is a small parts manufacturer, owns his own business in Connecticut. So I was raised within a blue collar family. My dad does centerless grinding, which is very similar to CNC
Wow. Mm,
machinist work. So it's like that's kind of the environment I grew up in. Me myself, I graduated high school in 2008. I joined the Marines in 2008, which is an important part of the story because you're talking
Mhm.
all moments. And it was a very small moment as to why I had joined the Marines. And this is
Mm.
because it is 2008. My brother had already been in the Navy, but I didn't join initially off of a sense of it was no sort of reaction to 9/11 or
Mm.
the Iraq War. I
Mm.
joined the Marines on the sole account of not wanting to go to college after learning about what it costs. I remember the
Mm.
conversation I had with my mom, like in our kitchen, where I was like,
Mm.
look at the price tag of what college was per semester, and I saw commas in the numbers, and and like,
Yeah.
and here I am at the time. I work at Burger King,
Yeah.
and I'm thinking to myself, I was like, this is how much going to school again costs because obviously I've been going to school without having paid for it. I did go to Catholic high school, but even I knew what how much going to my high school cost. It
Mm.
was college compared to Catholic high school is like unbelievably expensive. And my mom started to explain to me what student loans were and everything like that.
Right.
And here I am at 17. I was like, this sounds like the biggest scam I had ever heard of. And I was at so speaking of small moments, I was at a Wendy's in Waterbury, Connecticut, where a friend of
Mm.
mine who graduated a year before. I'm going to try to condense the story, for the sake of time, but he joined a year before. We had a conversation. The conversation had nothing to do with the military. He was simply asking about me. Very great, great sales tactic, by the way. Built a relationship, and right before he left, he had like handed me his recruiter's card. He's just like, "Hey, if this is something you're thinking about, man, it could be worth the conversation." And there was that small moment. There was my ticket out.
Mm.
So I
Wow.
it was and it was a good decision. I'd say at the end of the
Mhm.
day, especially looking back, because getting out of the military is a whole different story. But I was in the Marines from 2008 2012. I deployed
Mhm.
to Afghanistan in November of
Wow.
2010 to May of 2011.
Mm.
My MOS was 0844, which is fire direction control, which is in the artillery field. Um, and on deployment, we deployed with an artillery mission. We shot indirect fire for infantry units in support of combat units on the ground and operations going on in the northern Helmand province. Getting back from Afghanistan, the last year I was in the Marines was that was a weird time because
Mm.
it was a crossroads of trying to think about this as a career or getting out. And during that time, I did some cool stuff. When I was in the Marines, I went to water survival instructor school. I did a month of recruiter's assistance. Is that I was an NCO, so I was like actually training people on our job, like younger people coming to the unit.
Mm.
But I did end up making the decision to get out because a lot of friends I had deployed with had moved on, and so there's
Mm.
the feeling kind of just went away. I never looked at it as a career. I was dating the person who's now my wife, and that was a big factor in doing it, which is definitely the better move. Um, and then from there though is when it's kind of changed. I did end up going to college, and there in college itself for a veteran, and this is why it's important because I'd imagine that there's a good amount of veterans and there's
Mm.
drivers who listen to your show who might be veterans. The 4 years I went to college were good, but they were what I like to call a band-aid. I did everything I
Mm.
could to cover up what I had lost by leaving the
Mm.
Marines. I played some club lacrosse. I was in a fraternity at school. I was as involved as I could, but I still was living the same kind of lifestyle I was
Mm.
while I was in the Marines. Like we're talking like habits, like still smoked cigarettes.
Mm.
Still did a good fair amount of drinking, and it's
Mm.
like that. Never set myself up for success. I graduated college in 2016. I get my first job. I start working for Enterprise Rent a Car, and that right there was just like a continuation of what I was doing without school. So it was like very high speed, high
Mm.
demanding, a lot of hours. It's sales and customer service. I continued like my health
Mm.
wise, my health and fitness started to really spiral down. This is where a lot of weight started to get added on. Um,
Mm.
but at a certain point, but I eventually could not take that anymore. Speaking of small moments, because I was in that fraternity, though, there was a gentleman who was an alumni who talked about a company he was working for that was a wholesaler, and they were looking for, positions in this operations field. That's when I started working in a warehouse, and that's where I kind
Oh.
of entered the supply chain world.
Mm.
Um, and that brings us right up to 2017. Now, I do want to pause in case you want to pick anything apart or wherever you'd want me to keep rolling.
Yeah, no, I love that. I love the background in history because, you show that you don't have to have a let's put in quote, perfect situation to make something, something come out of something in your life to make a big moment, right? Like these small moments that you have can really change the trajectory of your whole life, So it sounds like something happened. What was it? What was it for you? Like 2017, was it something that you learned that you learned, or was it something small that impact how you were going to continue and approach your life?
Yeah, absolutely. I'd hardly call it a small moment, but it's small as in there was a complete almost 180. Well,
Wow.
I can't even say 180, but
Mhm.
because that's especially why I was excited to talk about this because that's everything to do with my philosophy of helping drivers out with their health. What had happened was by 2018,
Mm.
so again, things continue. By 2018, I was at my heaviest weight. I was right around 280 pounds. I would probably
Wow.
float,
Mhm.
on, at, under, or just over that. And it was fall of 2018, November,
Mm.
towards the end of November, about week and a half before Thanksgiving. And
Mhm.
a gentleman that I had deployed to Afghanistan with, he had passed away suddenly, very,
Mm.
very out of left field,
Mhm.
like totally unexpected. And this is a guy who, when I was in Afghanistan, him and I mean, that was the first and only time I was ever able to bench 315 pounds, and it was with him.
Mm.
And
Wow.
hopefully I'll get back there one day, but that amount of heavy strength training isn't, my main focus. I'm sure if
Yeah.
I focused on that, it would. But so this is somebody I was really close with. We stayed in really good touch after, and it was like it was
Wow.
very, very sudden. And right from that point, that was like a dividing line because there's
Mhm.
essentially two dividing lines in like my health and fitness journey. And
Got it.
this is number one that got me on the right path. And then there's another one that came in 2020 that made me really turn it into a higher gear. But this one really took me back, and I remember how I felt hearing it. You know, incredibly hurt by it. Because there's nothing. And at this point, we had already, since 2012, our unit had already, like, there's already other friends we've
Mhm.
lost to drugs, alcohol, suicide, car
Mhm.
accidents
Mhm.
since then. So like one of my first thoughts is, am I going to be next?
Aw.
What, like that, these are the thoughts that kind of can run through
Right.
your mind.
Mhm.
And I remember kind of looking in the mirror, looking at how my hands looked,
Mhm.
and the one of the things that came in my mind is, now if I could talk to, his name's Matt Brown. If I could talk to Matt,
Mhm.
what would he tell me right now if I was able to
Mm.
call him again? What would he
Interesting.
tell me?
Mhm.
And he'd know exactly. He'd want me to go right back to what we were doing in 2010 and 2011. He'd want me to go pick up some weights, and
Mhm.
it was quite literally a defining line. That's why I
Mhm.
preach a lot about how you don't need to wait till Monday or New Year's
Right.
Day or
Right.
any days, because it was like the middle of the week in November. The holidays are coming when I joined this CrossFit gym, and now
Got it.
I me joining this CrossFit gym. So this is the path of least resistance. This is what I did. So it's
Mhm.
like, that's why it's hard to take some compliments off the things I do now, because
Mhm.
I feel like how I got here was cheating, because
Mm.
I did, but and that's wrong. It's wrong to think that way. But
Mhm.
I took the ultimate path of least resistance, as in this CrossFit gym was group fitness, so I didn't have to
Group.
plan
Yep.
have, didn't have to
Yep.
plan any workouts. They're coach
Mhm.
led.
Mhm.
I asked infinite questions, and the warehouse I worked at, there were two ways to get home
Mhm.
from my house. Like, or if I wanted to get home from the warehouse, there's two
Mhm.
ways to go. And no matter what, if I took one way or the other way, I'd have to pass this gym, either
Mhm.
the back entrance or the front.
That's
So there's
awesome. Make
so
it
there
so you can't miss it.
it was, yeah, it was a perfect storm. Like, I couldn't do it.
Yeah.
And there were days I had gotten myself all the way home and felt like such a fool, such a clown
Oh,
that I would get back
never. You
in.
never a clown. Never think that. Your goodness.
But yeah, I would think, man, I think of myself as such a loser for missing. I'd go back and I'd take
Oh,
the 6:30 p.m. class. And
oh,
that was
Michael.
the
Yeah.
yeah, I know I should think that way. And that
Mhm.
was the first step in the like when it comes to those small steps, the first thing I
Mhm.
did was movement. Like so it was like
Mhm.
and that had
Mhm.
to become a habit. And I didn't know what that
Mhm.
looked like because in my head when it comes to health and fitness,
Mhm.
like I've never had any good habits because I was always active all the way from swimming growing up through the military and like even in the
Mhm.
Marines, I'd be, and I'm 5'11" for height reference. And so I'd
Uh-huh.
be around I'd float, I'd be around like 195 pounds ish. And then
Mhm.
we'd go to the field for a couple weeks, we'd train. And then
Mhm.
and just because I was in the field, I would come back weighing like 180. I would lose like 15 pounds easily.
Right.
Afghanistan, the same way. By the time like I
Wow.
went to Afghanistan, I was probably around 200, just below. Came
Uh-huh.
back from Afghanistan and I was a buck 75. Like,
Wow. Yeah.
and so in my head, that just had everything to do with, oh, I was active. And so the first thing I thought I needed to do was if I just exercise, it would work. So movement became the habit. And I just knew I
Mhm.
just needed to keep going. And if I just
Mhm.
kept going over time, that things would eventually
Hey,
start to change.
yeah, I like that. I like that because I think a lot of times, and I've asked this question every show, there's someone out there listening who's struggling, who doesn't think they can get out of bed. And I think you just gave them the tool, Michael. I think you gave them the tool. Like, what do you do when you don't have a passion to get up and do anything? And I think you just gave them this tip: movement. Get up, get up, take a step, go look at the blue sky, take a deep breath, right? I mean, there's so much to do. Last week, I had Melissa Cohen on my podcast, and she wanted to ask you what she was like. She was really intrigued by your background. And she was thinking, what do you think, given your work in trucking in the industry, what's the biggest issues around health and fitness? And, what makes a mind shift to make somebody want to change in this industry? Like, what do you think?
What I think the number one problem is, and it's kind of vague, and this was her question that she wanted me
Yeah.
to answer.
Mhm. Mhm.
Um, because there's no one answer for it. It's the environment and the culture in general. The environment and the culture, and other
Mhm.
industries suffer from this, I'm sure. And in other, whether it's real estate or whatever, there's a lot of other industries that have a lot of party culture and
Mhm.
et cetera, and how they want to work their hours. But it's the environment and culture here where it's even different from a sales culture where the main focus in the trucking
Mhm.
industry is
Mhm.
it's very much rooted in money. It's rooted
Mhm.
in how much can I drive? How much can I get per mile? How fast can I go? It is the entire environment. It does
Mhm.
not enable, and it's not that it doesn't enable, it does not endorse you to
Mhm.
live this lifestyle. It does not want to support you to do it. And I'm talking from the highest parts of leadership, from carrier and brokerage side
Mhm.
on
Mhm.
down. The entire industry wide as a total does
Mhm.
not care. It does not care.
Oh,
It does not think health is a problem. I think there are people who do, and there are
yeah.
leaders who are starting to wake up, and there's a lot of good
Mhm.
momentum coming. But
Mhm.
overall, at the like
Mhm.
the problem isn't getting if it wasn't a problem, it would be improving. And
Mhm.
it's, are we winning battles, especially these last few years with a lot of progress
Mhm.
we've made with Project 61 and so many
Mhm.
other influential people in the space? Sure, there's definitely battles being won, but overall, there is still a,
Mhm.
a massive issue. I mean, I'm talking for every link in the chain, from the truck stops,
Mhm.
from the motor carriers, from the shippers and receivers. Like wherever we go, we have to realize that this the supply chain itself is still run by and powered by people. And if the
Mhm.
foundation of the supply chain isn't built off of taking care of the health and wellness of those people, then it starts to crumble. And then that's why you see churn and burn and people, at a scale, it's like, sure, does the supply chain still work? Do you still go to the store and get your food? But at what cost? At
Right.
what cost? So it's just like, just because you're able to get gas in the morning, it doesn't matter that driver may have had a heart attack, or
Oh,
that's the third driver that's driven that truck that, this year because of XYZ issues. Like,
mhm,
just because, I like to think that photograph where it shows like I think it's like a meme where it shows a family like
mhm,
sitting at a park, and it's a beautiful day, and underneath the ground there's a whole bunch of like soldiers who are holding up the ground that are
mhm,
like, and it's supposed to be for like veterans. Like, this is,
mhm,
we have the freedom
mhm.
today because of the sacrifice of others. Like, the sacrifice of people in
Right,
this industry is what allows people to, easily go get the things they need, or food they want, clothes
right.
they want to buy. It's such an afterthought in people's mind. They don't realize the human sacrifice that's going
Yeah.
behind it, which I don't think
Mm.
is okay.
No, absolutely not. And you make an awesome point that really, what is it? It's the impact on our brains in our mental health when you're grueling and you're going at that level that we have to be aware of to help each other, because our mind and our mental health impact everything. If you're distracted, if you're thinking about the grief impacts your brain. You should see the neural scans of someone who's grieving, Michael. I mean, it's impactful. Like, we don't understand the science. We just go throughout our day, but we really, it's why I started the podcast. It's why I had you on, because I want individuals to see the power of having the will, the grit, the power to move yourself forward, because it can change your life. It can help you get up in the morning, and make a small change. And there's suicide is really impacting not only this industry but globally right now. What advice would you give someone who's listening, who's struggling today, to help them take the next step?
Community is the most important thing in the world, and I was just about to dive into that because I was going to go into that second gear turn that shifted me into wanting to the do the hard things motto, and that was, I read David Goggins' first book, Can't Hurt Me, and
Mhm,
I recommend it to every driver I talk to, and what it does, because the testimony of that book and the testimonies of it in it, it's, I call the book itself the excuse eliminator, and why you
mm,
can't do things. But that book is what got me to start running. What got me when I started running,
mhm,
like, there's something really magical, and I'm sure you might know this from maybe brain scans with what running can do for people's mental health. But in doing
yeah,
the running, I started creating content myself. I started the Lombard Trucking Show. I started making, documenting some fitness content on TikTok and Instagram, and I started in creating that. So by creating that content and talking and bridging
mhm,
conversations,
mm.
it got me involved with people within this
I love
industry
that.
who are like-minded, maybe not so
Uh,
much in fitness, but in wanting to improve the industry. Because I
mm,
made content, I was able to meet different people. I started having, guests and other drivers on the show,
mm,
and this kind of network grew from it.
mhm,
Like, I got immersed into this network of who I was able to meet. It brought me to Mid America Truck Show in 2023, where I met
mhm,
a lot of these people, like, from
mhm,
the internet in real life. Like,
mhm,
and so this community formed, this community of people I'm in within the industry, who are all, many are drivers, some are brokers, some work in recruiting, some work on the tech side and the TMS. Like, all these different people in this network that's grown since 2020 has become this really is, for the most part, everybody there is very positive and supportive person, where they want to help people win. My entire philosophy is to always help people win at any
Oh,
cost.
I love
Like,
that.
at
Mm,
any cost, at any
yeah,
cost. Like, there needs to be, there not only doesn't need to be, but I don't want any inherent benefit to me if I'm helping somebody win. I'm a
hey,
firm
I love
firm
that.
believer in
Hey,
that.
I gotta share some research with you. Okay, so I'm a researcher, and I mean, this is kind of geeky, but I just presented last week at the Texas Food and Fuel this research. There is research from Northwestern who has studied 25 years of brains, Michael. 25 years of brains. You know who super agers are? They're the people who are in their 80s and 90s who are functioning cognitively like a 30-year-old, 35-year-old. We all know someone like that. We also know people like my mom who had dementia and their brains are hollow. What do you think the correlation from the research of 25 years, the one thing that these brains of superagers have in common?
Well, if it's not
You just
running, it
you
must,
just you just said it.
it's got to be their community.
Community connection. And that is why connection and community is so important. Because what you're talking about is real and it makes you feel better. It makes people feel connected and it brings about change in our lives that we can never imagine. And this is why I love that you said that. And this wasn't planned. If anyone's listening, this is real because what you've experienced is the science of life. It is why it's so important not to be sitting on our phones all day. It's to be out and be in the community and be connect. This doesn't mean you have to go run an ultra or a triathlon like Michael, although there are benefits of doing that because it makes you see how strong we really are, right? How strong we can be. I'm so passionate about it. I'm so proud of you. I'm so honored for what you're creating in the industry because it matters and people need this community and connection more than any time in the history of of our world because we're living in a world where we need this more than ever. And so thank you so much. I appreciate that. I want to ask you because we're running out of time. We have to ask a question to my guests next week because I do this thing, Michael, where I have people ask each other questions because it extends the community, right? We extend our outreach of people who we know. So I have now this goes against the higher ed because she actually is a professor. So you probably will have a good question for her. She is actually helping with mental health though at the Citadel. I met her and she's in the psychology department here in Charleston, and there's a high suicide rate. You can imagine the Citadel, your work of being, and thank you for your service, of course, in the military, serving our country. But they're not even. A lot of these individuals aren't actually going to go active into, and they're still committing suicide. What should we ask her next week? What should we ask Emily?
Let's see. I think a good, this actually might be applicable. I think a good question for her, especially as she tackles this major issue, is what is a time that she has found out something to be true, but nobody else has agreed with her or
Oh,
thought that she was on the right track.
oh gosh, I like that. I can think of time. I can think a lot of times, Michael, for me. I think
Because
I think of that.
we're
Yeah.
we're coming up with that for on a lot of things, especially with issues going on in this industry. And I know we're running on time, but I can't harp on the community stuff enough because this job is very isolated in itself. And if your
Mhm.
community are, and if you're a driver, or if you're somebody who is surrounded by nothing but negativity, like if you are, there's the rotten lemon theory. If you put a rotten lemon next to a good one, and you put it in a room and you let it sit still, eventually the other one starts to grow the same spores. Like this happens in nature. And like to think that it doesn't happen with, I like to think about it as Wi-Fi. Like if we believe that our phones can pick up Wi-Fi, what is to say that humans don't have that same energy within each other? Like bad
Mm.
energy, bad influence is going to affect your brain, how you act, how in your confidence in yourself. Because I've seen it happen now with stuff in the trucking industry to fitness. The only reason I'm doing the things I do today, like Ironman and Texas Water Safari, is because the people I've put myself around. And it's really important for drivers to know who they're around and to not feel shame in cutting off who's not serving them and lifting them up.
Absolutely. Be with people that lift you up. It's why we have a connected learning platform because learner to learner engagement is the most powerful for neural synapse to make us feel better. So, why don't we do education in this way where we bring communities together to learn from each other? Because that's what we do. We learn the best from each other because of our experiences and what we bring. I appreciate you, Michael. Tell everyone I'm sure everyone who's listening knows where to find you. But if they want to go run a race or hook up with you, what's the best way of connecting?
Well, I live locally in Austin, Texas. So if you're in the Central
Oh,
Texas area in general, I'm always here running around.
I love that.
I do work with truck parking clubs. So I mean, if you're within this industry, there's always ways for us to team up and jump on a call and find something to collab on. I'm on the internet everywhere at Lombard Trucking, kind of like I mentioned at the beginning of the show. I'll be at Ironman Jacksonville in Florida on May 16th. And then I might have a fall race coming up too. We'll see where that's going to be, but you can find me anywhere. And I have a free Slack group with people in the industry that
Wow.
we jump in on. So, I mean, shoot me a DM wherever you can find me. I'm on LinkedIn, Michael Lombard. I've got a free Slack group with drivers and people within the industry. We kind of talk and keep each other motivated. So I'm always available, always ready to really help anybody listening and anybody within the industry, help them win at any cost.
I love that. Thank you so much for joining me today. You're incredible. Keep doing what you're doing and changing lives because every life matters.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. This is a huge opportunity. I like it. It's an honor to come on here and share, a piece of my testimony for at least one person who's listening and let them know like you can literally just do things. You can do anything going from, again, like 280-pound smoker, heavy drinker to, 2X Ironman, 5 marathons as an over the road trucker. Like there are no limits are only set by yourself.
That's it. You heard it straight from Michael. You set your limit. So make today be the day that you decide to take any limit away because your mind is powerful. If you like my show, be sure to like it, share it, join us because community matters. But until next time, we will see you. Be well and be kind to yourself because that's all we have.